You're listening to Kizuki, the podcast. I'm Mae Yoshikawa, and I define the Japanese concept of Kizuki as the following. Kizuki 1. A moment of epiphany, an aha of realization or insight which opens the knower to a new dimension of truth that was formerly unknown. 2. Steps in an incremental growth of awareness, resulting in a movement from ignorance to greater awareness of the bigger picture. A kind of knowing that cannot be undone, that cannot be unrealized. As a longtime yoga and meditation practitioner, a world traveler, and curious self-explorer, I'm obsessed with Kizukis. Listen on each week for inspiring and enlightening stories that may just tip you over for your next aha. On this week's episode, Domino Kizuki number 1, The Endurer No Longer. Recently, I've been going through something that feels like one of the biggest internal shifts of my life. And over the next few episodes, I'm going to do something I've never really done before, at least not quite on this scale. I'm going to share with you a domino effect of massive Kizukis that have been rocking my world lately. All this that's been happening and unfolding, it just doesn't feel like, oh, here's another issue to see and to heal anymore. It's just felt like this bursting, unfolding, like one realization revealed the deeper mechanism, and that showed me what was underneath it from the previous realization, and it just, like one after another, has been so revealing of the truth for me. I have to be honest, all of this has been incredibly hard work. Emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. And yet, at the same time, each domino has come with a feeling of a breakthrough of its own. So today, it's Domino Kizuki number 1, the massive one that just started it all. It began after I came across a psychological concept that resonated so deeply with me that it helped me to understand myself at an entirely new level. This wasn't about my habits or my mindset or even my coping mechanisms anymore. This was about my identity. So for years, I had been aware of, come to realization of, and talked about this bracing pattern. And you've all heard it in some past episodes before. I knew that I had this chronic tendency towards bracing, like a tension in my system, whether it was hypervigilance or anticipatory stress, a subtle sense of, okay, here it comes, or it might come. And I've heard other people call it as a sense of like waiting for the other shoe to drop. But essentially, underlying all of that is like this inability to simply let life be good for you. Some frame it as an anxiety pattern or trauma, or just being highly sensitive. But recently for me, after learning about this endurer identity in the psychological context of abuse and emotional survival patterns, something clicked into place and made sense for me in a way that it just never had before. Because I realized that bracing was not really the root pattern. Bracing was actually the symptom, and underneath it all was an identity structure that I had unconsciously built around being the one who endures hardship, the one who survives uphill battles in life, the one who makes it through pain. Yup, the endurer. And this realization shook me because as I look back at my life, things started to make sense. And not to blame everything on our parents or anything, but because our childhood and formative years are so fundamental to our development and nervous system wiring, I think for me, the original wound, I'm sure it had to do with both my parents and also my siblings and just the kind of upbringing that I had. But I would say primarily my relationship with my father. And in some ways, it might have been harder to catch because in my case, there was no obvious abuse. There was just a deep emotional experience of abandonment and neglect. It caused pain for me, the way that I've heard it said before, like death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's like not being noticed when you needed to be noticed. So there was a lack of presence, awareness, and attunement that I felt pretty consistently on a daily basis as a child, which also means that my childhood home and my upbringing felt emotionally unsafe for me on a regular basis because I wasn't feeling seen or deeply held. Now, as I look back, I realize how painful that was. But also, as a child, what do? You just make the best of it and you just survive it in the best way you know how. And my nervous system was shaped by this endurer pattern to automatically prepare for pain, to brace so that the fall won't shatter me. Now, the interesting thing about this kind of psychological and emotional wiring in the nervous system is that it's all pre-verbal, right? It's not like understood in any conscious verbal way mentally. So it's like a sense that connection comes with neglect. Commitment eventually hurts. That love comes with abandonment somehow. That's the way I tasted it. That's the way I knew it. So I think it's important to note that as a child, we work up this endurer pattern. And for my psyche to have done that was actually incredibly intelligent, to become the one who could survive it, who could withstand it, who could make it through the pain, because, what's the alternative here? It would feel for the child like death, like the end of the world. So I want to note that the pattern itself is not weakness. In fact, it's a very clever adaptation and protection. So in learning about what's called the endurer identity, I saw it in a new light, in a way that I had never fully seen before. And here's the difference. In my case, like for my system, it was never, oh, I have struggle, but rather, struggle is how I know I exist. And I want to highlight that because that understanding is crucial. It means that experientially, it's not, oh, this is a tough period to get through. This is a difficult phase. It becomes my identity, meaning I am the one who struggles. I am the one who endures hardship. So it's also this self-definition that gets put in place psychologically and subconsciously. And the flip side of that definition says that I had not gained a sense of self that doesn't know struggle, that I didn't know who I was outside of struggle. Ouch. This was just an earthquake moment for me. So, growing up into young adulthood, and again, I should note that I did not in any way have an abusive sort of upbringing. It was just a rowdy household and a lack of awareness. I mean, back in those days, all of this information about like mindfulness and attentiveness and mental health, I mean, it just wasn't available. It was a whole different generation. So I would imagine that it was perhaps similar for many of you. But having grown up through those years, in my early 20s and young adulthood, and also in my case, my mother had this progressive neurological disease. And so naturally, life felt like a struggle for me. It just, every day was my own fight to survive. How do I even handle my mom being so sick and changing week after week? Not to mention, I'm going to university or I'm trying to earn and pay my own tuition or, and then beyond university, trying to work and trying to cut it in society. I just felt like the world was a cold place and I hated it because it just felt like life was against me. Naturally, I resisted hard. I became fiercely independent because I just never knew how to count on support or if I had any to let it in because that just was never my experience. But I want to circle back to this endurer identity thing because it's not just that I saw life as an uphill battle. There was no way for me not to see life as an uphill battle because I had already identified myself. Like I gained a sense of self as the one who struggles, as who I am. And that was just like, I just felt like everything went quiet within me when I realized that. The kind of quiet that only comes after the boom of truth landing. If fighting was how I knew myself, bracing was how I knew myself, and enduring was how I defined myself, well, of course, I would never have a chance at just, let life be easy and let things fall into place, And I remember particularly in my 20s, being very aware of how I sucked at receiving compliments. And even when people did reach out for help or support or to celebrate my life, like people wanting to celebrate my birthday, I just didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it and I couldn't let it in. This softness of letting goodness in, it just never felt natural to me back then. And as I look back, I think I can say with the endurer identity sort of understanding, it's because psychologically, my system had learned this sequence that love comes with abandonment, hope with disappointment, receiving with loss, and softness with pain. So it's not like I was randomly bracing because there was something wrong with me. It's like my system was being quote unquote wise to prepare to endure because that's the fundamental mechanism that was in place after my childhood and formative years. So even my relationship with success, it carried this energy of like, fight for it, prove yourself, earn it. Because somehow, if life became easeful, then who would I be? And that was the mechanism that was running my entire system. And the crazy thing is that it's not just that these life circumstances made me feel that way. When you have that mechanism in place, then sure enough, you get really good at becoming incredibly hard on yourself internally. So there's been a lot of years in my life where I pushed myself relentlessly or pressured myself. And man, I was my own harshest critic. And I guess you could say that I realized that for years I had unconsciously continued this emotional violence against myself because the struggle itself had become tied to my sense of self. Okay, so there's one more critical aspect of understanding the endurer identity. And this is a really interesting one because when you study psychology and the way the mind works, when you have a belief in place, an underlying belief, then it's through that lens that you see and perceive the world. So for me, as a child, you could say that the core wound happened within my familial setting and likely mainly in my relationship with my father, which, by the way, I should also mention that he's great now and we have since healed a lot and we're great friends. But so for me, my core wound wasn't life hurts me. It was my experience that said, I am not deeply held in loving awareness. That's a much more precise way to put it because that was my experience with my father over a long period of time. And so without realizing it, even beyond long after I stopped living with my parents and I was living on my own or living with my partner and different things, without realizing it, with those lenses, I had projected the original father wound onto life itself. Meaning, there was some underlying understanding, a fundamental way that I saw the world that said, life does not fully see me. Life abandons. Because that's how the endurer identity remains necessary and in place. None of this is intellectual. This is experiential and actual, right? It's like, yeah, just taking a moment to let all of that sink in. Because I know that many of us have, we all each have our different upbringing, but I know that there's almost like an inherent addiction to struggle for many of us. And it's the understanding of identity and self-definition that helps us to pick apart the lens through which we have been conditioned to see the world. And in the clear recognition of that, for the first time, there is a release, a dropping. And once we come to Kizuki, once the awareness is there, the dropping is automatic. There's no effort required there. So it's like I can genuinely say now, sure, there were many years in my youth that I didn't feel held by my family and especially my father in the way that I needed. But let's make the distinction. I was never completely abandoned by life itself. Understanding that shifts something at a cellular level. Because then for the first time, you begin to open to the possibility that, well, yes, life isn't always easy. And of course, we all have challenges that come with being human. But life is always for me. Life wants to provide for me. There's always help around if only I can open to it. In other words, I am already held. So it's like this. Minus this unconscious need to struggle in order to feel like myself, it suddenly became remarkably easy to just love and honor myself as I am. Not in some earned way, but just because I am. It's really as simple as that. And, I think Time after time, episode after episode, I share with you how healing isn't about like fixing some broken part of you or becoming someone new. It's just this Kizuki, the realization that you were never essentially the pattern to begin with. I was never the endurer. I was always the knowing, the awareness that witnessed the endurer all along. And now that I know that it's just not necessary to build my identity around enduring struggle, I can build my life however I want to be. And I choose to just own it, that I am loved and held by life. Yes, I always was. And if you could just see it, you are too. Thank you so much for listening. And before I go, I'm super excited to announce that I have a very special event coming up in Tokyo at the luxuriously posh, newly opened One Hotel Tokyo. On Sunday, June 14th at 11 a.m., I'll be hosting a bilingual Kizuki journaling experience delivered in both English and Japanese. The ticket page will be opening very soon, so please make sure to follow me on Instagram at MaeYoshikawa to be among the first to know. I would be absolutely thrilled to see you there. Until next time.